In Star Wars, there are some heinous crimes that happen, from war crimes to entire civilizations being wiped from the galaxy. In this video, we'll go through 10 of the worst ones that occurred. Let's get started with one we'll all be very familiar with: Grievous's Dathomir massacre. The annihilation of the Night Sisters began when Darth Sidious ordered Count Dooku to eliminate Asajj Ventress, seeing her as a growing threat. Dooku attempted to carry out the order during the Battle of Sullust, where Ventress was already engaged in combat with Jedi Masters Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker. She survived the encounter and fled back to Dathomir, where she reunited with the Night Sisters. From that point, the focus shifted from Ventress to the complete eradication of the Night Sisters. Sidious, considering their magic and influence a direct threat to his long-term plans, authorized General Grievous and the Separatist forces to carry out a systematic purge of Dathomir. Grievous did as told and launched its assault on the planet. He arrived with a full invasion force, deploying Vulture droids, Hyena-class bombers, armored assault tanks, and legions of battle droids against the Night Sisters. Although the Night Sisters tried to fight back, even reviving their fallen comrades as zombies to help them against the droid army, however, it was ultimately futile. Grievous further used defoliator tanks to burn down the forest and also wipe out any organic life that were unlucky enough to be hit by the blast. Despite the Night Sisters' best efforts, the battle became increasingly one-sided as the Separatists systematically eliminated any resistance that stood in their way. While the Night Sisters on the battlefield were falling to Grievous's forces, Mother Talzin attempted to use magic to strike Count Dooku directly, but the effort failed to halt the invasion. Grievous, meanwhile, was a whirlwind of destruction, chopping down Night Sisters and zombies left and right with his lightsabers and thoroughly enjoying the process. Grievous then tracked Talzin's presence and managed to break into the cave she was performing the magic from. He executed Old Daka, who was responsible for keeping the zombie Night Sisters up, and tried striking at Mother Talzin, but she managed to escape. With the zombies gone though, the remaining Night Sisters stood no chance. After Mother Talzin escaped, Grievous and his forces went to every single Night Sister village, slaughtering every single one of them. It was a massacre, and the Night Sisters were all but wiped from the galaxy. Only very few survived the purge, as Grievous personally killed several of them. Morgan Elsbeth, who narrowly escaped after her mother was killed, fled with General Grievous mockingly taunting her and shouting for her to run as she disappeared deeper into the wilderness. By the end of the campaign, Dathomir had been effectively cleared of organized Night Sister presence. Survivors were very rare, limited to a few individuals left in the galaxy. Ventress would later become a bounty hunter, while some Night Sisters survived the massacre, such as Yenna, who escaped Dathomir in a pod, and the young Marin and Jercera. Stories of the destruction of the Night Sisters spread during the Clone Wars. Even Maul would later tell Ezra Bridger, while standing among the ruins of the Night Sister lair, that the Sisters would have been a threat to the Empire. In Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, set in 14 BBY, Marin also recounts the massacre of her sisters by an armored warrior wielding a lightsaber while connecting with Cal Kestis's tragic past. Well, the General has been making additions to his collection for several years now, and if you're anything like me, you've probably imagined what it could be like to own a saber yourself. So that's why I started my own store called Stickman Sabers, with a singular goal in mind. Make sabers that look amazing, being inspired by iconic designs but specifically built to actually duel with. No worrying about babying them, just pick them up and go ham. They're equipped with state-of-the-art pixel technology, giving off an incredibly bright light that will light up the darkest rooms out there. And obviously have that iconic hum, just feels right the moment you switch it on. And for a limited time, if you pick a collector's saber up, you'll also get 2 combat sabers for free. So, if you ever thought about starting your own collection, this is a pretty good place to start. Links in the description, and now, let's get back to the video. Destruction of Alderaan. While Anakin Skywalker, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Ahsoka Tano were drawn to the planet Mortis, Anakin was forced to witness visions of the terrible acts he would commit in the future as Darth Vader. One of these visions included the destruction of Alderaan. The first Death Star was created toward the end of the Clone Wars, and its development was influenced by the Tarkin Doctrine. The philosophy of ruling through fear, this monstrous weapon was capable of destroying entire worlds, and was intended to keep systems in line. However, Grand Moff Tarkin felt it was not having the desired effect on the rebellion as they continued to grow bolder. To demonstrate the station's true power, Tarkin decided on a public display of its capabilities. With approval from Emperor Palpatine, Alderaan, a peaceful world, was chosen as the scapegoat to showcase Imperial dominance. However, the Empire had already taken interest in Alderaan due to its political and strategic support for the Rebel Alliance. After Darth Vader captured Princess Leia Organa and brought her aboard the Death Star in an attempt to extract information about the stolen Death Star plans and the location of the Rebel base, her refusal to cooperate led Tarkin to threaten Alderaan. Even before the Death Star entered orbit, Karlist Riakan, Alderaan's general and a civilian tactician of the royal house, received urgent requests for evacuation ships, as he was overseeing covert rebel operations within the Alderaan system. At the time, Riakan was on Alderaan's sister world, Delaya. He reasoned that evacuating the planet would reveal that they were aware of the Death Star's existence, thereby confirming Alderaan's ties to the rebellion. As a result, he mistakenly concluded that the Empire's actions were merely a show of force. Meanwhile, even after Princess Leia provided Tarkin with false information about the Rebel base, he proceeded with the destruction of Alderaan. When the weapon fired, the planet was obliterated within seconds, its planetary shield offering no resistance. Out of a population of billions, the only survivors were those who had not been on the planet at the time, numbering fewer than 100,000. Senator Bail Prestor Organa and Queen Breha Organa perished in the catastrophe. The destruction was felt across the Force, with individuals such as Jedi Master Obi-Wan Kenobi and Nova Still sensing the immense loss of life. In the aftermath, many surviving Alderaanians joined the rebellion. Tarkin himself would later meet his end during the Battle of Yavin, aboard the very station from which he had ordered the destruction of an entire world. Gorman Massacre. Gorman was a small planet in the CERN sector, located in the Colonies region just outside the core worlds. In 19 BBY, shortly after Palpatine's declaration of a new order, the Gorman citizens strongly opposed his totalitarian rule, and the governor at the time refused to submit. In response, the Empire imposed a new tax levy on Gorman. Outraged by this unjust act, thousands of Gormans organized peaceful protests in the capital square and at the planet's primary spaceport. Their actions were deliberate, as they blocked landing pads used by Imperial vessels. Sadly, this would lead to a brutal retaliation from Wilf Tarkin and his forces. Captain Wilf Tarkin, who had just arrived on Gorman aboard his Imperial warship to collect the taxes, ordered his pilot to land directly on top of the protesters at the spaceport when they refused to disperse. This resulted in many deaths and numerous severe injuries. This ruthless act, later known as the Tarkin Massacre, did not end there, as Imperial troops were also ordered to suppress the protesters, leading to even more casualties. Among the dead were members of the Republic group who sought to restore the values of the Old Republic. The survivors eventually returned to their homes. Gorman became one of the first planets to feel Palpatine's wrath. However, the massacre shocked many across the galaxy and sparked widespread unrest. Tarkin, rather than being punished, was promoted to the rank of Moff. The massacre became a rallying cry against Imperial oppression, inspiring many to rebel openly. It also convinced Senator Bail Prestor Organa of Alderaan that the Galactic Republic was truly dead, and that the Empire's cruelty would only escalate. He had previously expressed his concerns in discussions with Senator Mon Mothma of Chandrila regarding the reformation of the Republic into the Empire. Following this, Organa began secretly supporting Mothma's growing resistance with weapons, food, and intelligence. However, this was not the end of the Empire's actions on Gorman. In 4 BBY, the Gorman Project was initiated. This project involved the suppression of the planet's population, followed by a mining operation for calcite, a valuable mineral beneath Gorman's surface used to coat reactor lenses. The project was part of the Death Star program and would likely destabilize the planet's core. It was highly secretive, and the Gorman population was to be dealt with harshly. Imperial Navy Admiral Dathomir suggested creating a plague or staging a natural disaster to justify relocating the population. However, these proposals were dismissed when ISB Lieutenant Dedra Meero presented an alternative to Director Orson Krennic: fabricate a rebellion to justify Imperial subjugation. Dedra was immediately tasked with overseeing Gorman, while an armory, disguised as an annex, was constructed in the capital city Palmo to reinforce the limited Imperial presence. The structure loomed over the Monument of the Fallen, a memorial honoring the victims of the Tarkin Massacre. By 2 BBY, the Empire had begun orchestrating terrorist attacks in Palmo, which were falsely reported as acts of Gorman aggression. At the same time, Imperial scientists on Iadu, working to unlock the secrets of kyber crystals for the Death Star, had exhausted all alternatives to Calcite. Growing impatient, Emperor Palpatine and Director Krennic ordered ISB Major Leo Partagaz to pacify Gorman. The Empire soon began deploying mining equipment to the planet, confident that their fabricated narrative would conceal their true intentions. The following day, hundreds of Gormans gathered for a peaceful protest in Palmo Plaza. An Imperial sniper, acting under secret orders, killed one of his own soldiers, leading Sergeant Bloy, commander of the riot squad, to believe the Gormans had fired first. This triggered a full-scale massacre, resulting in the deaths of thousands of civilians. Geonosian Genocide. During the Clone Wars, the Geonosians, under the reign of Poggle the Lesser, their Archduke, were members of the Separatist Alliance, contributing to the creation of the Droid Army. At the end of the war, the Geonosians came under the rule of the Galactic Empire and were forced to assist in the construction of the Death Star. They became an enslaved species and were forbidden from reproducing freely. At some point during the project, the Geonosians struggled to refine the superweapon super laser, leading the Empire to seek the expertise of Galen Walton Urso, a renowned scientist and leading authority on crystallography and energy enrichment. Some Geonosians from the Korakani Mound attempted to sabotage the project and reach out to Urso for help by sending him an Utheka. But Darth Vader intervened and eliminated them. Once the Death Star's hyperdrive became operational, Grand Moff Wilf Tarkin ordered the Imperial Weapons Division to sterilize Geonosis using gas canisters in order to preserve the project's secrecy. This resulted in the deaths of approximately 100 billion Geonosians, making it one of the largest genocides committed by the Empire. One of the few survivors was a Geonosian named Click-Clack, who escaped with the last queen egg into the depths of Geonosis. When the egg hatched, the queen, Karina, was sterile. She used the remaining technological resources on Geonosis to produce modified B-1 series battle droids that resembled her people, referring to them as her children. Later, Darth Vader arrived on the planet with assassin droids after the destruction of the Death Star and seized the technology Karina had been using, intending to build his own droid army. Another survivor, a hunter named Peck, was later killed during a hunt on X-3-299-11. Rumors also persisted into the New Republic era about the possible existence of surviving Geonosian eggs. Sith bombardment of Taris and Telos IV devastation. Admiral Saul Karath was a hero of the Mandalorian Wars and captain of the Leviathan, but he later defected from the Republic. In a bid to prove his loyalty to the Sith, during one of the earliest battles of the Jedi Civil War, he attacked and bombed Telos IV, using his codes to bypass planetary defenses. Sith bombers were able to infiltrate Republic docks before any warning could be raised, destroying half of the Republic fleet stationed there. The bombardment led to the deaths of millions, though some managed to escape aboard in-system shuttles. Shortly afterward, a Republic task force, including Carth Onasi, arrived in the system. However, it was already too late. Karath and Dark Malak deliberately left survivors so that their accounts of the devastation would spread fear and intimidate anyone who dared oppose the Sith Empire. A similar event occurred later during the height of the Jedi Civil War. This time, the Sith sought to capture the Jedi Padawan Bastila Shan because of her rare battle meditation ability. This power could enhance the morale, stamina, and combat effectiveness of her allies while simultaneously weakening her enemies, often breaking their will to fight. While en route to Taris aboard the Hammerhead-class cruiser Endor Spire, Shan was tracked by Darth Malak. He positioned his fleet in orbit around the planet to trap her vessel. Despite this, Shan managed to escape in a pod that crash-landed in the planet's Undercity. Also aboard the Endor Spire were the Jedi, once Sith, then Jedi again, Revan, and the Mandalorian Wars veteran Captain Carth Onasi. They too escaped in a pod, landing in the Upper City before the ship was destroyed. When Malak learned of Shan's escape, he immediately imposed a blockade on Taris, preventing all space travel. Meanwhile, Shan had been captured by a swoop gang known as the Black Vulkars, who operated in the Lower City. She was offered as the prize for the Tarisian season opener swoop race. Along with his allies, Revan convinced Gadon Thek, the leader of a rival gang, to sponsor him in the race. However, Shan ultimately freed herself. After Revan won, the leader of the Vulkars accused the opposing team of cheating, which led to his death. When Malak's forces failed to locate Shan, he grew impatient and ordered Admiral Karath to begin an orbital bombardment of the planet. Though initially reluctant, Karath complied. At this point, Revan had allied with the Mandalorian mercenary Canderous Ordo, who suggested using the astromech droid T-3M4 to infiltrate a Sith military base and retrieve the codes needed to break through the blockade. Revan succeeded and, along with Ordo, stole the Ebon Hawk, killing its owner Davik Kang in the process. Under heavy turbo-laser fire, Revan and his companions escaped Taris. The planet, however, was reduced to a smoldering ruin, with billions of innocent lives lost. Its once thriving cultural and commercial districts, known as the Sinking City, collapsed, along with countless skyscrapers. The destruction of Taris echoed throughout the galaxy. Wherever Revan traveled, the event was widely discussed. The devastation crippled Taris' economy and led to shortages of Tarisian ale, one of the planet's primary exports. Great Purge of Mandalore, Night of 1,000 Tears. After Ahsoka Tano and Captain Rex liberated Mandalore from the rule of Darth Maul at the end of the Clone Wars, Lady Bo-Katan Kryze was appointed regent by the Jedi. However, a clone peacekeeping force was left behind to ensure a smooth transition of power. It did not take long before Palpatine executed Order 66, established the Galactic Empire, and declared himself Emperor. He then used the clone troopers stationed on Mandalore to demand that the Mandalorians submit to Imperial rule. Kryze refused, prompting the Empire to install Gar Saxon, one of Maul's former commanders, as governor of Mandalore. During this period, Sabine Wren created a superweapon, the Arc Pulse Generator, designed to target Beskar. When the Empire chose to use it against her own people, Wren turned against them, even though members of her own family supported the regime. She ultimately destroyed the weapon and joined the rebel group known as the Spectres. In 2 BBY, she also claimed the Darksaber, the ancient symbol of Mandalorian leadership, from Maul. Saxon later arrived to retrieve it from Wren, sparking a civil war between Mandalorian clans. Wren eventually handed the Darksaber to Kryze as a gift, and Kryze accepted leadership of the Mandalorian resistance. However, the Children of the Watch believed the blade was meant to be won in combat, not given, and thus saw Kryze's rule as illegitimate, believing it brought a curse upon Mandalore. Unable to fully control the planet, the Empire later chose to punish Mandalore through devastation. This led to a large-scale Imperial assault involving both the Army and Navy, aimed at destroying the Mandalorian people. The event would come to be known as the Night of 1,000 Tears. TIE bombers deployed fusion bombs that devastated Mandalore cities, reducing entire settlements to ruin. KX-series security droids and probe droids were sent to scour the wreckage and eliminate any survivors. Kryze attempted to resist but lost most of her forces, and eventually confronted Moff Gideon in an attempt to negotiate a ceasefire. She surrendered the Darksaber in an effort to end the conflict, but the Purge continued regardless, leading to the near-total genocide of the Mandalorians. As a result of the bombardment and fusion weaponry, the planet's surface was glassed, its sands transformed into trinitite-like material. Some Mandalorians, including members of a covert group known as the Tribe, came to believe Mandalore was cursed, fearing that anyone who returned would perish. A few survivors remained on the planet, traveling across its surface in a landship while enduring the aftermath of the destruction. Years later, the Mandalorian Resistance and the Children of the Watch would set aside their differences to reclaim Mandalore from Gideon's Imperial remnant. Destruction of Jedha City. When the Death Star was completed, Galen Erso convinced an Imperial cargo pilot named Bodhi Rook to defect and deliver a message to Saw Gerrera on Jedha. Rook traveled to Jedha, his homeworld, and successfully delivered Erso's message. Around the same time, Captain Cassian Andor learned about the message from Tivik. Tarkin soon discovered Rook's defection and his presence on Jedha City. He decided to test the Death Star on Jedha, both to demonstrate its power and to deter other systems from joining the Rebel Alliance. Captain Andor, Jyn Erso, the daughter of Galen Erso, and other Rebel operatives were sent to verify Rook's claims and locate Galen Erso. Upon arrival, they were captured by Gerrera's forces and brought before him. Gerrera then gave Jyn her father's message. The decision to destroy Jedha City was not Tarkin's alone. Director Orson Krennic, head of the Imperial Military Department of Advanced Weapons Research, was also involved. After Imperial forces evacuated the area, Krennic gave the order, and the city was destroyed within seconds by a low-power blast from the Death Star. Some Imperial stormtroopers failed to evacuate in time and were killed. Several of Gerrera's followers also perished, along with Gerrera himself, who, in his final moments, spoke the name of his sister, Steela, who had died during the Clone Wars. Captain Andor, Jyn, Rook, and the rest of their team narrowly escaped, fleeing just before the shockwave consumed the catacombs where they had met Gerrera. Even after the Death Star was destroyed during the Battle of Yavin, Jedha remained a devastated and lifeless world. Kashyyyk Massacre. Right before the Battle of Endor, the Galactic Empire carried out a massacre on Kashyyyk. It was so devastating that Mon Mothma, Chancellor of the Alliance to restore the Republic, considered training as a fighter pilot rather than pursuing diplomacy with the Empire. She later shared his thought with Leia Organa as the Alliance prepared to face the Empire's DS-2 Death Star 2 mobile battle station. Sith Holocaust. During the conflict between Naga Sadow and Ludo Kresh over who would succeed Marka Ragnos after his death, two sibling explorers, Gav and Jory Daragon, were captured. The arrival of the siblings, who had refused Jedi training, caused the Sith Empire to fear discovery by the Republic. Sadow manipulated events to make it seem as though a Republic invasion was imminent, positioning himself as the potential savior of the Sith. This earned him the support of the Sith Council, allowing him to claim the title of Dark Lord of the Sith. He trained Gav in Sith sorcery while pushing his political agenda by expanding the Empire beyond its traditional holdings in the Stygian caldera. Sadow then began preparing an invasion fleet to strike the Republic. Even when his deception was uncovered by Kresh's faction, Sadow silenced them by defeating their forces at the Battle of Cardelba. During this time, he allowed Jory Daragon to escape, having secretly placed a homing beacon aboard her ship. Jory managed to deliver a warning to Empress Tita of the Koros system about the impending invasion. The Empress relayed this information to her Jedi advisor Odin and his master Uru before alerting Coruscant, though few took the warning seriously. After establishing a base on Primus Galud, Sadow launched his invasion of Republic space. He positioned his meditation sphere near the red giant star and used battle meditation to enhance his forces. Gav Daragon was given command of the Koros Major Invasion Fleet and was proclaimed the liberator of his home system. Coruscant itself came under attack, led by Sharda Khan, Sadow's chief lieutenant. While searching for his sister at the home of a family friend named Arpa, Gav was confronted by Jory, who believed he had killed their friend. Forced to flee, Gav's retreat contributed to the Sith's defeat on Koros. He eventually arrived at Primus Galud and fired upon Sadow's meditation sphere, disrupting the Sith Lord's concentration and giving Republic forces the upper hand in the battle for Coruscant. During the Battle of Kashyyyk, Jedi Master Uru sacrificed his life, dying in the arms of his Padawan Odin As the tide turned against him, Sadow began retreating to Primus Galud, pursued by Jory, Empress Tita, and a large Koros fleet. In a desperate move, Sadow used a superweapon aboard his flagship to trigger the nearby star into a supernova. Before the explosion, Gav turned against his master and transmitted the coordinates of the Sith Empire to Empress Tita. Moments later, the star went supernova, destroying Gav and Sadow's meditation sphere. Back in Sith space, Sadow's rivalry with Kresh continued. Kresh was ultimately killed when one of Sadow's ships crashed into his during a battle over Korriban. As the Sith forces fought among themselves, Republic fleets arrived and annihilated them. Sadow, however, escaped and went into hiding. Sharda Khan became an acting Dark Lord, but in the aftermath of the war, Supreme Chancellor Poltimo ordered a full invasion of Sith space. Dakan responded with suicide attacks, which initially forced Republic forces to retreat. However, this strategy ultimately backfired, as many Sith began engaging in ritual self-destruction. With the Great Hyperspace War ended, Jedi Odin established the Great Jedi Library, preserving both ancient Jedi artifacts and Sith artifacts recovered from the wreckage of the invasion fleet. Some Sith fled into exile on worlds such as Tund, Vajun, Thule, and Kesh, ensuring the survival of their traditions. Naga Sadow himself escaped to the Yavin system with his remaining Massassi warriors. On the fourth moon, he mutated them to become stronger but less intelligent, before placing himself into stasis using Sith sorcery. Genocide of Cathar. After Mandalore the Ultimate became leader of the Mandalorians, the Sith suggested invading the Republic, and he and his people readily agreed. In preparation, they began conquering planets outside Republic space and later targeted Cathar, as the Mandalorians had previously suffered a deeply dishonorable defeat there during the reign of Mandalore the Indomitable. With Kashyyyk leading the assault, the people of Cathar were caught off guard. The Mandalorians first destroyed all interstellar communication relays and orbital space dock facilities before descending to the surface and slaughtering much of the population as they slept or attempted to flee. Using basilisk war mounts, Fett devastated the primitive Cathar settlements. Because Cathar was not part of the Galactic Republic, its people were forced to face the Mandalorians alone, and the Mandalorians quickly overwhelmed them. Kashyyyk then drove the surviving Cathar to the ocean, where he ordered their execution, even killing a Mandalorian who objected to the massacre. One of the Cathar's final acts was to send able-bodied survivors into space aboard a small number of ships. Among them was Juhani, who would later become a companion of Revan. She fled with her family to Taris. This genocide nearly led to the extinction of the Cathar species. News of the massacre later became a major catalyst, prompting many Jedi to join Revan in the war against the Mandalorians. Oh, and again, for a limited time, every Stickman saber purchase comes with 2 additional combat sabers, so you're more than ready for your own duels. If that sounds like something you'd want to look into, the link's in the description.